A lot of work on the budget line side, and he is a longtime veteran in the trading industry. He began his career right out of high school working with a noted trader, Tom Hopkins. He's traveled and managed many events and projects. Is a member of the NSA, designated certified speaking professional. He also has had the opportunity to work with the newest generation of trainers. Ron is an author of a best-selling book on sales management, Managing for Sales Results, available on Amazon.com. Never wanted to be somebody who used to do and now teaches. Ron has stayed extremely busy, involved in selling and managing sales teams. He has had great success raising revenues in the horse trailer industry, oil and natural gas for Lake Energy in Houston, Texas. He has also brought a gaming table, Galaxy Gaming, out of Las Vegas, from $2.4 million to $7.8 million in just 3 years, helping them develop their business in sales and marketing. In the last 2 years, he has been over in Australia working with different home improvement companies, and he has done everything from selling, I like the way he puts this here, he has been at the inside the home at the kitchen table working over with 750 times selling solar energy, outdoor blinds, synthetic turf, and one more.
Replacement windows.
Replacement windows, thank you. So I think we're very confident that you guys are going to love what he has to offer, that he's going to help you guys with your business and getting you to the next level to move. So please give me a warm welcome for Ron Marks.
Thanks. Let me ask you a question to start. How many of you knew when you were in high school or say college that sales was going to be a career that you were going to be involved in? One hand. It's about normal. I speak to groups all over the world. Sometimes there'll be 2,000 to 3,000 people in the audience. And I'll ask that question. I'll say, how many of you knew that when you were in high school that you would be actually selling something? And the answer is very rarely that they were. My son Scott, he graduated from Arizona State University a couple of years ago, and before he graduated as a sophomore, he had asked me to speak at his college class, his marketing class, and I actually didn't go to college. So I was pretty honored to be a guest professor at Arizona State University. And I was asked to speak to this group of marketing students about the idea of persuasive presentations. And so I got up and I asked the same question to that group. I said, how many of you think when you graduate college you might go into sales? Guess how many hands? Not a single hand. But in 2012, when he graduated, 48% of Arizona State graduates are now selling something. And nationally, it's just over 50%. And what we find is selling is a career that it's the highest paid hard work. It's the lowest paid easy work. It's also the oldest profession in the world. There's people who will argue with that. They say, wait a minute, Ron, there is an older profession. I mean, biblically speaking, there's an older profession than selling. But I suspect it's just a subset. So here we are in this business of sales that we never thought we'd be in. I like to think of it as an accidental profession. And I never thought I'd be a salesperson. My mom thought I'd be a good salesperson. She said I had the gift of gab. She said, Ron, you're a great BSer. You should get into sales. So I left Chicago, Illinois, where I grew up, at the age of 17 and a half. And I moved to Arizona strictly because Arizona had a licensing requirement for real estate agents of 18. Illinois was 21. So I moved, and I got lucky while I was going to school. I met a guy named Tom Hopkins. And Tom, as many of you may know, is one of the founders of this personal development in the field of sales. He wrote a book in 1982 called How to Master the Art of Selling that many people have read over the years. And I got to travel all over the world. I built a company, ran it for 22 years, and then as Tom kind of retired his career, I started getting into working with clients on a more direct level. And as Chip mentioned, I was in the horse trailer business with a company called Sundowner Trailers. I was in oil and gas limited partnerships, so I had to get licensed with the SEC. And then I spent 3 years here in Las Vegas, living here. I reside in Phoenix, but I was up here for 3 years, and working with a company that sells table games to casinos. So Red Rock is one of our clients, and we were able to help grow that business. But the last 2 years is probably what's most relevant to you. I was invited by a long-term client that I've been working with for a number of years, and they asked me to come to Australia strictly because the government was retracting its subsidy of solar energy. And it was easy to sell when the government was paying a share of it, but it got more difficult when you didn't have that government subsidy. So this client of mine said, hey, Ron, we need some intense help because we built this infrastructure and we need to help our people to close sales. And we need you to come out. So my kids are out of the house. I just had a grandson, my first grandson 2 weeks ago, but they're out of the house. They're out of the house, so I've got boys, and they're between 27 and 20, and they're all out. So my wife and I decided that going to Australia would sound like a great adventure. So they set up our visa, and we went to Australia. And I spent a year living in Cairns, Australia, working in the solar energy field, the replacement window field, solar aircon, and working with this company. And at that time, I spent about 365 times in the home. And I didn't want to be just one of those sales training guys who comes in and kind of does seminars. I actually got into the home. I did a lot of presentations myself. I learned their product. And then I got an offer from a company to extend a year called Australian Outdoor Living. They're a national company, and they moved me over to Perth. And in Australian Outdoor Living, I sold outdoor blinds, synthetic turf. We did patios, pergolas. So we got involved in a very similar selling model that you do right here. And one of the things that I was able to accomplish, and the reason they wanted me to stay and work with them intensely like that, was because they were trying to increase the incidence of making a sale on the first visit. So what they were trying to do is move up their incidence, and they were selling about a third. So I know when I talk to Tailored Living franchisees, I know that when I speak to the folks at Budget Blinds, I know that back in 2009 I spoke to the Premier Garage folks just here in Las Vegas over at Monte Carlo. If any of you were there, I know that you probably closed 60-70% of what you see. The challenge is, and this concept that in this outcome, is that you close it eventually. I'm working on a one-on-one coaching level with a number of Budget Blinds franchisees, and anywhere from 500,000 to 3.5 million. And I asked them, I say, what do you close of the people you see? If you see 10 people, how many? Oh, 6 or 7, sometimes 8. And I say, okay, first night, how many do you get? Oh, well, that's different. Maybe 15 to 20%. What would it mean if you could close just a little more without creating a lot of high pressure? Because that'd be the reason why you wouldn't want to make efforts to close on the first visit. But if you could do some things that didn't look schlonky or high pressure sales and all that, if you could do that and create the incidence of selling more on the first visit, would you want to? What's the answer to that? Yes, because there's a cost to this concept called eventually. And that's really what I want you to think about, is if you could close the business sooner rather than later, that time that you spend going out, following up, getting estimates over, making phone calls, revisits, getting into the showrooms, whatever it is that you have, depending on the level and where your business is at, that has a cost in your business. That takes money from your business because you're not out doing other things. So this company, Australian Outdoor Living, was selling about 30%. At the end of the year, by doing the things I'm going to share with you this morning in the next 75 minutes, they were able to move things up to 48%. So better than 50% improvement in the incidence of closing the first time without creating a lot of high pressure. And in our business, you can't afford to. Years ago, it's interesting because when you think about when I got into sales, years ago, you only really heard from your customers that were really happy or really upset, right? Now, does that middle group that wouldn't have said anything 15 years ago, do they have a medium now to voice their opinion? They do. And the company that I worked with was very conscientious. They had a full-time person that's a brand reputation manager. All they did was sit and watch the internet and see what was coming up and see what kind of comments. So you can't implement high-pressure strategies and stay safe in the digital world. Would you agree with that? Because people will voice their opinion, and they have a place to do it now, where years ago they might not have. They would have just silently went away. So what we have to create is a process that helps people make a good decision. So the first thing is that. Now, obviously, from the first visit, the importance of that, we all get that from a financial perspective. But what I want to present to you today is what it means to the customer. In other words, shifting it, creating a paradigm shift where we don't try to sell them on the first visit because it's good for us, which I'm certainly, it would be, but more importantly, it's good for them. We're also going to talk about changing the expectation from just giving a quote, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to create urgency without creating pressure. And we're going to look at ways to set the agenda. One of the reasons I see sales consultants, and as I mentioned, I probably did about 100 presentations myself. I was able to close about half of them. You know, on the first visit, I probably witnessed